Possible here. Let's keep listening to Shapiro's article. Quote, half measures merely postpone our realization that the Arab dream of Israel's destruction. Without drastic measures, the Arab dream will come true. In the short term, the establishment of a Palestinian state based in Judea, Samaria, and Gaza cuts Israel to the bone. In some places, Israel would be an unthinkable 9 miles wide. In the long term, the growth of the hostile Israeli Arab population within pre-1967 Israel bodes ill for the future of the Jewish state. As University of Haifa professor Arnon Stoffer says, the trends and indicators all point to an economic and ecological catastrophe waiting to happen and the death knell of the ideological dream of a Jewish state. Here's the bottom line. If you believe that the Jewish state has a right to exist, then you must allow Israel to transfer the Palestinians and the Israeli Arabs from Judea, Samaria, Gaza, and Israel proper. It's an ugly solution, but it is the only solution. And it is far less ugly than the prospect of bloody conflict ad infinitum. When two populations are constantly enmeshed in conflict, it is insane to suggest that somehow deep-seated ideological change will miraculously occur, allowing the two sides to live together. End quote. I'm reading this and I can't help think, where is the lie, though? Shapiro is absolutely correct in his observations here. When two populations are constantly enmeshed in conflict, it is insane to suggest that somehow deep-seated ideological change will miraculously occur, allowing the two sides to live together. And that's a principle that doesn't just apply in Israel. It applies anywhere you have hostile populations forced to share the same territory. An example everyone should know is what happened in former Yugoslavia after the fall of the Soviet Union. Various groups, including Serbs, Croats, Bosnians, and Muslims, were all living under the control of the same state. Because of the differences between these groups, the tenuous relationship was doomed to fail. And in the ensuing wars, hundreds of thousands of people were killed as each group eventually separated and formed their own state. A process that we still see playing out today between Bosnia and Kosovo. Let's be clear about what Shapiro is proposing here. He's saying that if you believe Israel has a right to exist, then you must be okay with allowing Israel to forcibly transfer the Palestinians and Israeli Arabs out of Gaza, out of Israel, out of Judea, and out of Samaria. In other words, peaceful ethnic cleansing. Quote, unfortunately, this insanity, referring to the current state.
Okay, so he sets up really the argument there from Shapiro's standpoint. And I will say this, okay? I don't think that Shapiro's argument was really a good... I don't think he made a good argument of it. I think that he did a bad job. And I think he was... he hasn't been vindicated by it, because the fact is that if he suddenly has a different position as far as immigrants in the United States, then really, what the hell is this point? So there are some differences here, and they're very clear. Okay, so what Shapiro refers to with the Palestinians is their desire, and he says it openly, their desire to eradicate the Jewish state. It says the leader of the Palestinian Islamic resistance movement, Hamas, has strongly condemned the recent decision by U.S. President Donald Trump to recognize Israeli-occupied Jerusalem, Al-Quds, as the capital of the Tel Aviv regime, stressing the so-called state of Israel does not exist and cannot have a capital according. This is from Iran Daily. Okay, addressing Hamas supporters on the 30th anniversary of the founding of the movement in Gaza City on Thursday afternoon, Ismail Haniyeh lauded the sacrifices made by members of the resistance movement to keep the Palestinian cause alive. Hamas was created in order to defend Palestine and occupy Jerusalem, Al-Quds in particular. Haniyeh went on to say that all freedom-loving people of the world supported the cause of Palestine as well as Al-Quds. He says Al-Quds, Jerusalem, belongs to the entire world. He noted, calling for mass protest rallies worldwide in order to force Washington to reverse its decision on the city. No power in the world can change the identity of Al-Quds. The state of Israel does not exist and therefore cannot have a capital. We will sacrifice our blood and life for Al-Quds and Al-Aqsa Mosque, Haniyeh pointed out. So this is the leader of the Palestinian people in Gaza, and that's what he believes. That's actually not a photo Yeah, that is a photo of his. That is him. So that's his belief system. And on that, Shapiro is entirely correct. Even, that was their belief system, not just in 2017. It was their belief system in 2003 when he wrote this, when he wrote the the other piece. Sorry. So what Shapiro is talking about is a situation that's not necessarily existent here in the U.S. Are there Mexicans that are hostile to the United States? Yes. Is there a massive movement of the Mexican government or a major militant group within Mexico to take over the United States? Not really. The drug cartels do have very significant groups of assassins, Los Zetas and things like that. But you're not talking about the same situation. So there's a bit of there is some territory where you could say Ben Shapiro is kind of talking about a different situation in the United States. But remember what Allsup caught him at. He was saying that really it's the value system, not the people or the race that matters. And the fact is that he does attribute to the Palestinians as a whole, and not only the Palestinians, but Arab residents and citizens of Israel, with this blanket statement that they don't belong and they can't be dealt with to live in harmony with the Israelis in any shape or form. So essentially, he has found that Shapiro, notwithstanding the extenuating circumstances of being in an armed conflict, is conflating the values with an entire group of people. Okay, now I would say that the vast majority of people, bigger than the proportions that Allsup is talking about with black people and Hispanics, the larger majority of Palestinian people don't think Israel has a right to exist. Okay, this is from 67% of Arab Israelis reject Israel as a Jewish nation state. So those are just the Jewish. Those are just the Arab residents of Israel. Now you can see here, these are Jews and Arabs in a bookstore in Israel, in Jerusalem. Then there are here's another poll. Maybe we'll get one from Breitbart. Okay, you want to use Breitbart, guys? So most Palestinians support terrorism from Israel. Over 70% of Palestinians support an uprising against the Jewish people of Israel. A Palestinian polling institute found in data released Monday, for those who support an uprising, 42% are in favor of carrying it out violently. Okay, so it's a little different, but while 30% prefer a more peaceful uprising, just over 50% support a full-blown intifada against Israel, a long terror campaign that seeks to overthrow the Jewish state. Additionally, over 62% of Palestinians polled say that they oppose peace negotiations with the state of Israel. The poll also found that 48% of those surveyed believe that the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, who leads Palestinians in the West Bank as the chairman of the Palestinian Authority, should quit his job. Russia's intervention in Syria remains deeply unpopular with Palestinians, according to the data, with 69% opposing Moscow's presence in the country. So it's an interesting poll, and it reveals that the Palestinians are a little more complicated than either Shapiro and what's his name, Allsup are claiming. But you can conclude from here that the majority of Palestinians do not want a Jewish state in the historical land of Israel/Palestine. So in reality, we're dealing with a situation where both people are right about what's going on. They just have vastly different approaches on how to deal with it. Allsup had said in the video that the Israelis are stealing Palestinian land. Okay? And the fact of the matter is that you do have Israelis building settlements in the West Bank, but you also have, in many cases, Arab Israelis they're doing a lot of illegal building within Israel. So I would say that if you're trying to find a moral and ethical constant here, you're looking at the wrong conflict, and you should probably just uh, focus on something else in life. But James Allsup, let's get back to his talk about Ben Shapiro.
State of affairs, not his proposed population transfer, is generally accepted as the only way forward. President Bush accepts it because it is politically palatable. The Arabs accept it because for them, it is a Trojan horse. The Israelis accept it because they're afraid if they expel the Arabs, they will be called secret weapon of the Arabs. Anytime the Jews get wise and threaten mass expulsion of Arabs, the Arabs pull out their big stick, equating Nazism with Zionism. And at this point in the column, Shapiro goes on to make the historical case for forcible ethnic transfer of entire populations. Quote, the Jews don't realize that expelling a hostile population is a commonly used and generally effective way of preventing violent entanglements. There are no gas chambers here. It's not genocide, it's transfer. It's not Hitler, it's Churchill. After World War II, Poland was recreated by the Allied powers. In doing so, the Allies sliced off a chunk of Germany and extended Poland west to the Oder-Neisse line. Anywhere from 3.5 million to 9 million Germans were forcibly expelled from the new Polish territory and relocated in Germany. British Prime Minister Winston...
Okay, so let's pause there. What he's saying is that because Churchill did it, and because Churchill was not in the minds of popular society as bad as Hitler, that it was okay to expel those Germans from Eastern Germany / now Western Poland. That I think is a real moral leap. And I think that you cannot forgive. Of course, I'm not going to say that Germany never did anything wrong because they killed most of my dad's family. But what he's saying is, well, in order to create a new Polish country after World War II, we're going to also expel. So you're compounding something bad that the Germans perpetrated on, the Jews, the Poles, and other people. You're compounding it by doing something bad to German civilians. That's not really the way. That's not the way that you make the world heal, in my opinion. If you're trying to make the world heal, not everybody is. So, and I'll go even further than that. Why talk about Germany and Poland only? What Churchill and the other British leaders did, I think by then he was out of power. It might have been Clement Attlee and Lord Mountbatten. They partitioned India, and that led to the deaths of millions of people between the Muslims and the Hindus. So did that really work? No. And you're not really going to. It really is actually an indictment of Shapiro's whole basic premise from earlier in the video, where people with similar values but different races and traditions can get along. And I think Allsup kind of owns him in that respect. So at this point, we're going to put Ben Shapiro to the side, and I will address my personal take on James Allsup's criticism of Israel as an ethno-state. And I will tell you this, okay? If you want to call Israel an ethno-state, then who the fuck are these people? Okay, I think these ones live in the U.S., but they're Indian Jews, and there's Indian Jews living in, I believe. I mean, this is pretty easy to find though. Yeah, so there's Indian Jews as well. Let me see. There's Prime Minister Modi of India was visiting Israel, and you had a number of, what the fuck is going on here? Okay, the Curry House in central Israel, a poster welcoming Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi greets patrons even before they encounter the rich scent of spices wafting from the kitchen. Modi's 3-day visit beginning Tuesday, the first ever of an Indian premier to Israel, is a landmark moment for the Jewish state. A country seeking the friendship of powerful allies and customers for its advanced military equipment. Yeah, that's probably going to happen too. But for members of the small Jewish Indian community in Israel, the trip is a case of genuine and a unique opportunity to increase their visibility. There's not a single Indian household that's not talking about it. This is all people are talking about, said Elazar Ashtivker, owner of the Maharaja restaurant in the city of Ramla, south of Tel Aviv. It's historic, he said. And this is the guy. Does that guy look like Ben Shapiro in any meaningful way? No. They are probably as different as you can get. To claim that they are members of the same ethnic group, you would have to stretch the definition of what ethnicity means, which you can do. I looked this up. Merriam-Webster says, okay, ethnicity means a particular ethnic affiliation or group. So what the hell does that mean? It says nation, nationality, or race. Okay, a university that aggressively recruits a student body of diverse ethnicities. Surrounding her was a group of people of different ethnicities and faiths holding signs speaking out against hostility toward immigrants and separating parents from their families, from their children. So is it the same ethno-state? I'll ask it again. Is it the same ethno-state if you're talking about this person who's Indian Jewish and Ben Shapiro, who is not Indian Jewish, who's some sort of European Jewish? Is it the same ethnic group? You can't. If you're making that case, then ethnicity, as far as the United States is concerned, is different from the way it is in India. So you would have to have separate standards for Allsup if he's trying to make the case that Israel is an ethno-state and he wants the United States to be an ethno-state, because by the same standard that he's holding Israel to be an ethno-state, that would mean that a black Lutheran and a white Lutheran are the same ethnicity. I don't think that you would make this. I don't think you could say that. It just isn't. The fact is, okay. A lot of people, I've had people argue that Israel is, the Jews are a nation, okay. But what is a nation, okay? So you have here. This is a video I found before making this, and it's these people coming from China, and they're Jews.
Chang Lang, Qin Qin and Nina Wang, 3 Chinese Jewish women living in Israel, were waiting in the arrivals hall of Ben Gurion International Airport for 7 of their friends who were making Aliyah from China. Chang Lang went through the same experience 3.5 years ago.
I feel that I had a wonderful time. Each step, after the 3.5 years, I get used to this land and get to this society, and I feel so good.
Can you tell me about your feeling now?
Oh, I'm so excited now. Also get even a little bit nervous.
Actually, it's like a part of our family, but actually we don't have relatives. But still, we were studying together in Kaifeng, and we came 4 years ago, and nowadays they are coming, so it's welcome back home.
The 7 young men were warmly welcomed by their friends.
Okay, so this is not an ethno-state if you're getting people who are a completely different race. Okay, a Chinese person and an Ashkenazi Jew like Ben Shapiro are not the same race. And it's very arguable that they're the same ethnicity. They would only be the same ethnicity if you consider Judaism, which is a belief system, to be an ethnicity. And I think that at this point, you get to my opinion, which is this. If you look at what China is, okay, these people are from Kaifeng, which is in China. China is a massive country. And you could see here that there's the Han Chinese, who are over 1 billion people. And then you have all these other people, the Zhuang, the Uyghurs. The Uyghurs, by the way, are Muslim. So the majority of China is not Muslim, and then you have this major group of people who are 10 million people in China who are Muslim. Then you have these Tibetans who are, so China is a nation, and within China there are many different ethnic groups, but they define their nationality to be Chinese. And the same thing broadly is India. You have in India, you have the people of Punjab who have their own language, and the majority of them have the Sikh religion. And then you have the people of you go to a different part of India, Hyderabad, and the majority of people there are Muslim. And then you go to other parts. I don't even know. I'm not going to claim I'm an expert on India. And the majority of people are Hindu, or there's probably some city with a bunch of Jains, or whatever, or Janes, I don't know how you pronounce it. Every country, I think, has a certain character to it where, its ethnicity and its nationality kind of diverge, okay? Czechoslovakia used to be a nation of two different ethnic groups, and then it split apart, and then Allsup actually mentioned before, and he should probably have gotten into it a little deeper if he really would have expounded on it. Bosnia, the Yugoslavia, okay, used to be made up of a number of ethnic republics. Okay, you had Macedonia in the south, and then you had, and I've worked with somebody from Macedonia, cool guy. Serbia, you have Kosovo, which was Albanian, is Albanian basically. Bosnia, you had Montenegro, Croatia, of course, and then you had Slovenia, I think was the last one, all the way in the northwest, and then there's Vojvodina, which is like a little more complicated, which is part of Serbia, and what you have to understand is that even within Yugoslavia, you had Bosnia, which was almost evenly divided between three groups: the Serbs, the Croats, and the Bosnians. Did they speak different languages? No. Did they look recognizably different in their physical appearance? Not very much. Okay, a Serb, a Croat, and a Bosniak Muslim don't necessarily look very, very similar. The only difference between them, of course, there's probably some linguistic differences between the languages spoken by Serbs and the languages spoken by Croats. The Croats use a Roman alphabet, the Latin alphabet, and the Serbs use the Cyrillic alphabet. But at the end of the day, they speak the same language, and they have different religions. The Croats are Roman Catholic, the Serbs are, the Serbian Orthodox Church, and the Bosniaks are Muslim. So really what Allsup is doing here is he's negating the very concept of what role religion plays in people's lives. And again, I never said that I supported Shapiro's break from Breitbart and his fight with Steve Bannon and everything, but the fact is that he moved over to a news organization that's much more religiously oriented than, at least in my opinion, it's more religiously oriented than Breitbart, because Ben Shapiro is one of these Judeo-Christian conservatives. He's not one of these people who is he is to a certain extent libertarian, but he's not one of these conservatives that believes in total, social liberalism. He's somebody who looks at the world from a biblical perspective in many cases. Okay, and there's a lot of conservatives like that, and those aren't the people that are going to jibe with the worldview of somebody like James Allsup. James Allsup is part of the New Right. And many people on the New Right, like the Red Elephants guy and that other guy, Nick Fuentes, they have said, well, it's bullshit why the United States has any sort of alliance with Israel, and we have investments in the Middle East, and we give foreign aid to Israel, and etc., and we're involved in wars there. And I would say, yeah, I agree with you. I don't believe in and I'll say it this way: I don't believe in intervention in Israel or in Palestine. I don't believe in intervention of the United States in any of the Middle East. I think if we pulled back our resources and decided, we would be less involved there, some of these conflicts wouldn't even be happening. Some of them would be happening regardless of what we did. But at the same time, when these people start to say, well, USS Liberty, etc., why aren't we, Israel is actually not our friend at all. Look, you have to remember that the United States was involved in the Cold War, and Israel was involved in the Cold War as well. And guess whose side they were on? They weren't on the side of the Soviet Union. They were actually supporting the United States. So the ties between the U.S. and Israel were not a matter of our promised land, and the special relationship and everything because of America being a Christian nation, as some of these conservative Zionists say, and that's what they call themselves, Christian Zionists. It was because of the Cold War reality that Israel was opposed to Egypt and Syria, which were Soviet allied states during the Cold War. Okay, so just like you would say, well, why should we be helping Israel at all? Why should we be allied to them? Well, why does the United States have a relationship with Italy? The United States was invested heavily in Italy during the Cold War because we didn't want them to turn communist. And we even have air bases in Italy to this very day because, as a residual result of the Cold War. So don't conflate issues of ethnicity, issues of religion, issues of which, by the way, Allsup doesn't talk about at all. So you have Shapiro, who doesn't talk about ethnicity, versus Allsup, who forgets completely about religion. And they both want to talk about the issues of immigration and geopolitics. I don't think it's realistic. I think they're both looking at an ideal world that is not going to happen for either of them. On the one hand, Shapiro wants a Jewish state that doesn't have any hostile members over in the Middle East. Okay, and Allsup wants the same thing here in the United States. Okay, they both want the same thing, but not for the other person. Okay, although Allsup does say at a certain time that he doesn't really care what happens in Israel. So I think that's about it. And I want you guys to put your comments below. And I'll let you know this, okay? This sort of division on the right, I think, doesn't really matter. I think most people don't give a shit about this topic. A lot of people oppose immigration because it directly affects them. And a lot of people support Israel because it's part of their religious belief system, okay? Or in the case of the United States, or in the case of some of these, because of selfish interests, defense contractors. Why do they support Israel? Because they get to sell them arms. Because they basically get the United States government basically gives corporate welfare to these defense contractors through this relationship, not only with Israel, but by the way, with Egypt and with Saudi Arabia and with other countries in the Far East. And that's the way it is. And that's the way the world works. And it's not about, ethno-states and, traditional society and who believes in the welfare state or not. It's about cold, hard cash, baby. And that's not what Ben Shapiro or James Allsup is going to say about this topic. They're both going to say it's a matter of either, on the one hand, ethnicity, and on the other hand, a system of shared values. I don't agree with either one. Let me know what you think. Comment below. Please share the video, like the video, subscribe to this channel, and subscribe to the other channel, Razor Ray Live Wounds, and I'll talk to you guys later.